Dash and Spin Hyperspeed Sonic Manga Issue 4. We start out with Sonic and Tails relaxing on beach chairs. I always like seeing Sonic in shades, though it never makes sense when he's wearing shades clearly not big enough for his eyes. Look at Tails, his shades are big enough for Mobian eyes. The shape of Sonic's cool shades proves that humans do exist in his world, and to the point where he had to settle for these. And Tails' glasses look ridiculous with those frames. And Tails is drinking out of a coconut. Immediately after Sonic and Tails have fun, Amy tries to ruin their fun, saying that they didn't come here for a vacation. She wouldn't have looked like the bad guy here if we had known this from the start. We should have been shown that they were all here to find hidden treasure immediately. Instead, Amy starts out the story acting like a bad rip-off Sally, spoiling their fun. You'd think if she was really in love with Sonic, she'd just be happy he was having fun like a proper fangirl would do. What's the point of her character if she's not going to be a fangirl anymore? That's like Tails being unable to fly. She's outgrown her original purpose. What I'm seeing right here is a prototype of how Amy became portrayed after Sonic Generations, where she went from in love with Sonic to bitch. I found out earlier that Sonic Freeriders was actually intended to be a reboot of the Sonic characters' personalities, which explains why it was a rare Sonic game with a character supervisor, despite getting the personalities horribly wrong. I wonder if this is where it came from, though Amy still says that the treasure will be the most romantic one in the world, and blushes while saying that it'll make Sonic's dreams come true. So she still is infatuated with Sonic, but still, that wasn't a good first impression. I don't see why they think they need Sonic and Tails in particular to look for the treasure. So they could have let them stay there and relax. At least that's what it looks like now. I love that Knuckles is wearing a hat like he's OVA Knuckles, and combine that with the fact that he's trying to be a treasure hunter all of a sudden. I love seeing a connection between the OVA and this. We already saw Sonic being the type to tell Tails to shut up, and having an attitude, just like in the OVA. This is the kind of sharing of ideas, giving it all a cohesive direction that I wanted from Sega Japan's original non-game continuities. Their answer to stuff like roboticization and Sally. I want a lot more of this. Maybe this explains why Knuckles is a treasure hunter in Sonic Riders with no Master Emerald in sight. Sega Japan was already considering ditching Knuckles being just the guardian of the Master Emerald, even by this point, or at least one Japanese continuity was. And that makes sense marketing-wise since Knuckles was popular, and he can't make tons of appearances for the fans if he's always stuck on the island, unable to interact with anyone. So Knuckles is treasure hunter here. This gets him actual freedom in his life. Instead of having a sad, boring existence doing nothing but napping in front of the Master Emerald with no intellectual stimulation or exercise, he gets to travel all over the world. I bet he's much happier, and he's actually got a strong friendship that I can believe in, even with Sonic, which means he's healthier socially. Who needs the Master Emerald anyways? It's just a redundant extra magical gem which barely ever shows up. We already have the Chaos Emeralds. All it can do that's unique most of the time is counteract the Chaos Emeralds. And that's a very rare situational power compared to letting Sonic go super whenever he wants. I wonder if Sonic, Tails, and Amy always go treasure hunting with Knuckles. Because I don't see why he'd need their help. He's not explaining that he's humble enough to realize he could benefit from Sonic and Tails' abilities. He didn't ask them to go with him last issue. In fact, why would he ever need their help? I don't think he'd need to go fast for it. And he can glide and climb up anything he glide into from not being able to fly. So he doesn't need Tails. So he's probably just with them for company. I guess this is the kind of thing they like to do as friends in their downtime. Then Sonic sees a boat, and Eggman's fishing on it with the traditional rod. That's different. I mean, you'd think someone who loves advanced technology and isn't supposed to care about nature would just throw fishing nets and get way more food than that. Eggman's supposed to be easily frustrated and impatient. Why would he ever put up with fishing for more than 5 seconds? At least the heroes are surprised by this. Eggman fishes up a boot with his hook. That happens all the time in Harvest Moon games. Is that still a real thing, or just a cliche that isn't realistic? Because of all the garbage you could fish up from the ocean, why a boot? Who loses boots? Who throws them in the ocean? He'd be more likely to get ocean plastic. Then the heroes wonder out of nowhere if Eggman will get the treasure. So it was underwater. That's more creative than being buried. While Sonic hangs on to Tails as he flies over to Eggman, Knuckles and Amy swim after them, so Amy can swim, just like in Sonic X. And Knuckles can swim, as SA2 established. Eggman says that the radar he's holding says the treasure's right below him. Why would he ever try to use a normal fishing rod to fish up treasure? He's got better technology than this. But instead he thinks he has no choice but to dive in. And it turns out he's now shirtless and wearing a loincloth and a snorkel. Why bother with a snorkel if you're diving in the ocean to get treasure? Eggman acts surprised at seeing them, and tries to deny that he's looking for treasure, as I wonder how someone as smart as Eggman can be so stupid as to think, well, maybe the part of the ocean he's at isn't that deep, so he wouldn't be crushed by water pressure if he swam to the bottom of the ocean. That has to be the case in that one episode of Sonic X2 to explain why the heroes didn't need diving suits and could just walk on the bottom of the ocean. It just wasn't that deep. But still, you'd think someone as technology-focused as Eggman would insist on having a diving suit. If he's smart, why would he take the risk of drowning himself? Eggman jumps out of the canoe, a shark threatens Eggman, and actually eats him. Sharks are more likely to go after someone if they have a cut exposed of some kind. Maybe he does. You'd be surprised how willing a shark can actually be to leave people alone. I bet he's fine. Knuckles warns Sonic, and inexplicably thinks the shark's the guardian of the treasure, even though it was clearly non-sentient enough to eat Eggman without talking. The shark sends the canoe into the air, and Sonic tells Tails to catch Amy, and Sonic says he can't swim. But then why did he tell Tails to catch Amy, who clearly can swim? Amy says she loves him because of it. And I don't blame her for being led on here, because that wasn't something he needed to do. What a stupid sacrifice. Knuckles thinks he has to lure the shark away from Sonic, and as I started suspecting, because it's a sci-fi series full of animal robots, the shark launches a missile at Knuckles, and then at Sonic. So Knuckles punches it away and saves him. I like that he's being competent. So, how did anyone find out about the underwater treasure? We don't know that, so the story seems a bit forced. If the information was really readily available to the point where two opposing sides knew about it, like it was on the internet, wouldn't the treasure have already been found by now? Wouldn't there be a lot more treasure hunters here? How'd Knuckles get his treasure map? It would actually be better writing if the heroes were here for a vacation and they kept it simple, and Eggman knew about the treasure because of a metal detector. Knuckles thinks damn it since he's in danger. I'm glad he thought it instead of said it underwater. Then Eggman threatens them, revealing that he's piloting a shark as a mecha. And I take back my compliment, because Sonic and Knuckles do talk underwater without gargling. Knuckles finally takes Sonic to the surface, and Sonic runs along the surface of the water like in Sonic 3. Then he fortunately comes back for Knuckles and carries him as they're being chased by the shark bot. Then he fortunately says sorry for leaving him behind, which makes him a lot better than Sonic X Sonic, who left Knuckles in space no problem. The shark bot jumps out of the water, and I'm glad Knuckles is written to say that Sonic's riding it. Something gets sliced apart, there's a panel that I didn't want to see, and there's an explosion. I'm gonna have to use the snipping tool for a lot of still images, aren't I? Then Eggman explains that he's the one who drew that buried treasure map, which fortunately fills in the plot hole of how they all knew to be here so easily. I wonder how they got the treasure map, because if they just saw a map just outside of Knuckles' house, you'd think he'd be suspicious and immediately assume it was from Eggman, because the person who buried the treasure wouldn't want them to get the treasure. And I wonder why they wanted to subject us to Eggman like this. Why did he lose his clothes? And somehow Knuckles and Amy are still excited to see what's in the treasure chest, even though Eggman just said he drew the treasure map. I guess we're supposed to believe that both Amy and Knuckles are equally stupid. Do you think they would suspect the treasure of being a bomb? That'd be the obvious idea to surprise the heroes and win. And once again, I'm forced to assume Tails is swearing here because the tiny text bubble isn't translated and there's no indication of what sound effect he'd make. And there's no reason they couldn't just translate the sound effect. The treasure's a disappointment, and Eggman says it's romantic while wearing a loincloth. So that was the treasure? He could have easily just killed the heroes here. This story was an exciting one where the heroes all go under the sea to look for a buried treasure. Unfortunately, the treasure map they all conveniently know about is explained, as Eggman was the one who drew it, to lure them to a trap. Knuckles and Sonic get threatened by a shark mecha the whole time that sends a missile at them. Why didn't it just keep sending missiles after the first one? I guess when he was making it, Eggman was too pressed for time to make more than one, because it's not like him to give up after the first try. And now I understand why he made sure Amy would be caught by Tails instead of him, as once again, a character that seems like an idiot is actually being smart. He knew about the shark that sent them all to the water, and he figured that while Amy can swim, he can run across the water much faster than anyone can swim. If Amy had fallen in the water instead, the mecha wouldn't have been sliced apart. She'd be unable to do anything. She didn't do anything. In the story they introduced her to the manga, she did nothing. Wasn't that great for female characters? While Knuckles was OVA treasure hunter Knuckles, Amy was just Amy. And the heroes could have just been on South Island for a vacation and happened to spot Eggman here, and the plot would have made more sense. Because why would they have been suspicious of a treasure map they suddenly got? But Eggman wouldn't have looked as smart. Eggman seemed like an idiot for trying to fish with a normal rod. But it turns out he was just waiting for Sonic to spot him so he could try to kill him and Knuckles. So I guess he was just pretending to be surprised by them. And just pretending to want to look for the treasure with the radar. He was just talking out loud to hope they'd hear him. That's kind of a narrative cheat. Plus, he might have been actually trying to catch fish to eat, just to do something while he was waiting for them. In general, it was a great story. I don't like that we had to see Eggman in a loincloth, especially with his creepy wide eyes. But a few panels don't ruin the story because of something that shouldn't have been drawn. I guess its intended purpose was comedy, but nothing about this manga is funny anyways.